Hello, everybody. This is Ryan from My Try Running Programs, and we're into week 7 of the Hal Higdon Advanced 1 Marathon program. And kind of similar to some of the previous weeks, nothing super exciting really to report this week in terms of the workouts themselves. You can see it's pretty basic. 3 easy runs to lead out the week with a 3-mile run to start, 8-mile run right after that, and a 4-mile run. Couple of workouts in here where I do a little bit of a longer hill workout, and you'll see that as I talk through the video. And then an 8-mile pace effort followed by a 16-mile long run, which I flip-flopped this week just based on timing. So in terms of the week, how it ended up breaking down, relatively simple week in terms of mileage, about 50 total miles, well, a little bit more than 50 miles, but the vast majority was done at a relatively easy pace. So not terribly unmanageable, even though I would consider myself probably a lower distance person when it comes to my overall training volume in past years. I probably would max reach 30 to 40 miles. So this training program is actually helping me get my max mileage up a lot more. And it's also just helping me to stay consistent. So even though the mileage is getting a little bit higher, it's still not really feeling too difficult because it leads up so well. Now, in terms of the runs, first run for the week, really simple run, 3-mile run, 8:42 pace overall. Kept it very consistent, just kept it around my neighborhood. Nothing major to report here, just keeping it easy, keeping the legs fresh. In the second run for the week, it's a little bit of a longer run with 8 miles, but still done easily. And you can see I tried to keep it very easy at the overall 9-minute and 12 seconds per mile pace there. And this is something that I'm really have been working on in more recent weeks. I'm making this video maybe about a few weeks after I've actually done this training, and it gives me some time to reflect. The thing that I really was doing somewhat poorly at the start of the program was trying to run too much of my easy work in the low 8s or even the mid 7s. And it's really not necessary. These runs, I have to really just kind of remind myself that I'm just kind of basically getting my muscles loose again, keeping myself fresh, putting a little bit of time under feet. So I was actually really happy seeing this slow of mileage because I'm doing the right thing. I'm keeping it nice and easy. Now, this might have been a little too easy, but I would always rather err on the side of being too easy than too hard. So overall, once again, pretty simple, easy run for this week. This was followed up by another easy effort, 4 miles at 8:24 pace. Kind of a weird spike here in the second mile. This is not a traditional route for me. I got out pretty early this particular run in the morning for this run, I should say. And so that might have messed a little bit with my pacing. Plus this particular mile that I ran right here, super flat, even slightly downhill a bit. So that might have led to a little bit of a pickup in pace. But I do remember this run, I was probably just a touch nauseous because as I've alluded to in past videos, I do a pretty poor job of running when it comes to getting up too early in the morning, especially while I'm still on this Yohimbine cut where I'm trying to cut a little bit more weight before the CIM marathon that I'll be running in December. So that probably had a little bit of an impact on this run, but still overall for an easy run, I think the overall pacing of it and the consistency was very, very solid. Now for the first workout of the week, I have a 5x hill workout. In my particular hill workouts, for those who have not watched my videos in the past, I do them quite differently than Hal Higdon recommends. So Higdon recommends that you do roughly about a 400 to 800 meter repeat up a hill, just as for as many repetitions as he puts in for the week. In my case, because I want more mileage in this program, and also because of the marathon that I'm running, which is undulating in kind of its overall course setup, to me, I try to run more like mile-long hills or slightly less than a mile long. So I have a couple of hills kind of within the neighborhoods that I'm kind of running. One goes all the way up Constitution Boulevard, and then another one goes up this little side street. The name's blanking for me right now. But essentially, I'll do a little bit of both. And the reason why I like Constitution is that it's longer. It's about a mile. The reason I like this particular street is even though it's shorter, there's more vertical gain. Now, neither hill is huge by any stretch of the imagination, but there's a little bit more gain to earn here comparative to Constitution. In either case, I try to kind of mix them up so that I get a little bit of different stimulus with each hill that I'm going on. None of them I run terribly fast, and this would also probably be somewhat counterintuitive to what Hal recommends. When he's looking at these 800 meter repeats up a hill, he's looking for them to be a relatively more kind of tempo-y, higher threshold type effort. Whereas in my case, in many cases, I should say, not every case, but in a lot of cases, I'm running them more just at a sustained effort because it's more of a middle to long distance run almost by the way that I modify it. So I'm not trying to be too confusing in how I run it, but that's why I keep these times relatively consistent, though I do try to stay more near the mid eights or even low eights or high 7 minute pace so that I'm not, really losing out on some overall training stimulus as I'm running. Now, really the long run for the week was probably the first of two runs that didn't go really the way that I wanted it to. And you'll notice I got out very late for me at least. I'm normally not a nighttime runner unless I absolutely have to. And this was just a unique situation where my wife's work schedule left me in a position where I had to go out very, very late to run. And so in this particular case, the training program called for a 16-mile run. And really the entire run, I kind of felt like I had to go to the bathroom the entire time without being too personal. And so it just really was an uncomfortable run for most of it. You can see that the pacing was maybe a little slow from what I would like to run for a long run. I try to keep most of my long runs. It may be more like 8:30-ish pace, maybe even low eights. But really, for me, this was not a run that went particularly well, and it was primarily just because of the stomach issues I was having. And you can see basically, I started what I felt like was comfortable for the first 2 miles, and then you can see I just slowly got slower and slower as the run went on, and then it got to the point where I was, quite literally needing to walk because I was just not feeling well enough. I felt so nauseous at that point that I needed to kind of stop the run, which is very unlike me on a long run. So it was a little bit of a disappointing long run. But not a huge issue in the grand scheme of things. When it really comes down to it, if for me, the way I view my training, if I have to cut a run short, I have to cut a run short. I would rather live to fight another day than force out a couple more miles when I'm not going to get a good training stimulus from it if I need to constantly keep walking or things of that nature. And that does somewhat lead into my real kind of key workout for the week, which was the 8-mile goal pace run. And quite simply, I just ran this too fast. So you can see instead of hitting 8 miles, I hit a little bit under 6 and was running them at 6:33 pace on average, far too fast for this type of run. It should be run much more around the 7 minute per mile pace. That's what I feel like could be a relatively decent race pace for my marathon. So this was just done much too fast. And I just frankly just grew tired. Really no issue other than I was just tired by the time I got to nearly 6 miles. I realized I was running more like kind of like a 10K effort than truly a really marathon goal pace type workout. So, it's just one of those things where you're in the heat of the moment, you're running, you're enjoying yourself. I had a lot of energy going into this run, and I just kind of blew up a little bit from just going too fast. Not a huge issue, probably at the end of the day, you're still getting a decent training stimulus from this. So it's, if you're going to fail, I suppose this is one way of failing a workout in a good way, because you just turn it from a goal pace effort into more of like a threshold, more like a lactate threshold type effort, or even just like a heavier tempo type run. So it wasn't necessarily a wasted effort, but it was just missing what the plan called for. So overall for the week, not a bad week by any stretch of the imagination. And in this run, I think there's some good takeaways actually before I really wrap up. The good takeaway is that you can see there's some top end speed being developed, 6:26 and 6:19 for the first 2 miles. That's pretty great. And then followed up by not a half bad 6:28. And then this slower mile where I'm going uphill was then followed by 2 pretty good miles after it. So if I would have been able to maintain that pace, that would have been pretty exciting to see that I'm able to really, take in some kind of a longer effort at a much, much quicker pace. So in a lot of ways, this still gave me some good confidence for future weeks, and you'll see how this kind of pans out, I should say, as you watch these upcoming weekly reflections that I have on my training. This week, even though it didn't go perfectly according to schedule, it went well enough that I think it had a really good impact for the 2 upcoming weeks. So hopefully you found kind of this breakdown useful in terms of how it went for me. Overall, I think this was a decent week. It's a really fun week, I think, if you hit all of the workouts. If you ran it the way Hal really wrote it up, I don't think you would run a 50-mile week here. I think you'd run probably more around a 40 to 45-mile week. So my mileage might seem a little high comparative to others doing this program, and that's by design. I'm modifying some workouts, primarily the hill workouts, so that they're longer. So hopefully you found that useful, and I look forward to seeing you in future weeks.